I thought the cheating was the worst betrayal until my wife stared me dead in the eyes and delivered a chilling confession about her much younger lover. My phone vibrated against the cold marble of the kitchen island, shattering the absolute quiet of a perfectly normal Tuesday morning. It was an unknown number. The screen preview displayed a massive, overwhelming block of text followed by 6 image attachments. I blindly tapped the notification, expecting some elaborate spam message or a wrong number. But the very first sentence instantly paralyzed my lungs and drained the blood from my face. The message read, "My name is Nilan. I am 22 years old, and I have been sleeping with your wife, Bella, for the last 8 months. I am so sorry to do it this way, but you need to know the truth because she refuses to tell you." My hands began to shake uncontrollably as my thumb scrolled down the screen. Nilan had sent receipts. He sent screenshots of text messages, late-night call logs, and photographs. The pictures weren't just innocent selfies, they were intimate, undeniable, and utterly destroying. There was my wife, the woman I had built a life with for the last 7 years, lying in a bed I didn't recognize, smiling a smile I thought belonged exclusively to me. As I stood there, physically leaning against the counter just to keep myself from collapsing onto the hardwood floor, I heard the familiar, rhythmic click of Bella's heels coming down the hallway. She walked into the kitchen looking absolutely flawless, dressed in her sharp corporate attire, her hair perfectly styled. At 37, Bella carried an air of sophisticated dominance wherever she went. She walked past me, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire universe had just violently imploded, and reached for the coffee pot. Couldn't breathe. I expected to scream, to throw something, to demand answers with a booming voice, but when I finally opened my mouth, all that came out was a pathetic, broken whisper. I turned my phone around, the bright screen illuminating the darkest, ugliest secret of our marriage, and showed it to her. I said, "Who is Nilan?" I stood there, bracing myself for the inevitable storm. I was ready for her to drop her coffee mug. I was ready for the sudden, panicked tears, the frantic backtracking, the desperate lies, or the sickening sound of a cheating spouse trying to gaslight their way out of a corner. I thought the worst part of this entire nightmare was going to be the sheer physical betrayal of her letting another man touch her. I was entirely wrong. The absolute worst part, the part that will haunt me for the rest of my life, was how calmly she reacted. Bella didn't flinch. She didn't drop her mug. She didn't even widen her eyes. She calmly finished pouring her black coffee, set the glass pot back on the warmer, and took a slow, deliberate sip. She looked at the bright screen of my phone, recognized the photos, and then looked me completely dead in the eyes. Her expression was utterly blank, completely devoid of any guilt, remorse, or panic. Bella sighed, a soft sound of mild annoyance, and said, "You would have never known if he hadn't texted you first." The sheer, freezing apathy in her voice felt like a physical knife twisting in my stomach. She wasn't sorry that she had shattered our marriage. She wasn't devastated that she had completely broken my heart. She was just mildly irritated that her convenient, secret arrangement had been exposed by an impulsive kid. She leaned against the counter, crossed her arms, and looked at me as if I had just pointed out a minor scuff on her shoes. I stared at her, completely horrified, trying to find a single trace of the woman I loved in her eyes. I asked, "That's it? That is all you have to say to me? You've been sleeping with a 22-year-old kid for almost a year, and you don't even have a single tear to shed?" Bella set her coffee down and spoke with a terrifyingly clinical detachment. Bella calmly explained, "Oscar, it was just sex. He was young, he had an endless amount of energy, and he was fun. It had absolutely nothing to do with our marriage. You provide my stability, my home, and my actual life. Nilan was just a distraction. But he's young and stupid, and recently he started getting entirely too attached. He started demanding that I leave you so we could have a real relationship and build a future together. I told him he was being ridiculous. I told him I was never going to leave my husband for a bartender who can barely afford his own rent. He got angry, threw a temper tantrum, and I guess this is his little revenge." She spoke about a human being, a kid who had clearly fallen deeply in love with her, as if he were a broken toy she had simply decided to throw away. And she spoke to me, her loyal husband, as if I were nothing more than a reliable financial asset. Nilan's message suddenly made total, agonizing sense. He was a young guy who thought he was living out a romantic movie, having an intensely passionate affair with an older, sophisticated woman. He honestly thought their hot, secret encounters meant she loved him. When the reality hit him, that she was 37, deeply entrenched in a comfortable marriage, and never going to choose him, he panicked. He nuked my entire life, not out of respect for me, but out of desperate, childish jealousy. I looked at Bella, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt absolutely nothing but a cold, heavy disgust. I didn't scream. The fight completely drained out of my body, leaving behind a hollow, echoing emptiness. The woman standing in my kitchen wasn't my partner, she was a stranger who wore my wife's face. I turned around, walked down the hallway, and went straight into our bedroom. I pulled my largest suitcase from the top shelf of the closet and started throwing my clothes into it. I didn't fold anything. I just grabbed handfuls of fabric and shoved them in. Bella followed me into the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching me pack with that same infuriating, unbothered expression. Bella watched me zip the bag shut and said, "You're overreacting, Oscar. Are you really going to throw away 7 years of a perfect life just because of a stupid physical mistake that means absolutely nothing to me?" I grabbed the handle of my suitcase, walked right past her without making eye contact, and said, "Yes." I walked out of the front door, started my car, and drove away from my own life. I spent the next 3 weeks living out of a sterile, quiet hotel room, navigating the incredibly surreal experience of dismantling a marriage. The divorce process was the final, defining proof of exactly who she was. Bella didn't fight for me. She didn't call me crying in the middle of the night begging for a second chance. Instead, she treated our divorce like she was dissolving a failed corporate merger. She only cared about dividing the assets quickly so she could maintain her comfortable lifestyle without any disruption. As for Nilan, I actually ended up having a single, pathetic conversation with him months later. He called me from a blocked number. He sounded completely broken, his voice cracking with the heavy, bitter weight of reality. Nilan confessed that the exact second he sent those screenshots to me, Bella had permanently blocked his number, blocked him on all social media, and threatened to call the police for harassment if he ever came near her office or her home again. He had blown up his entire life, completely destroyed my marriage, and burned everything to the ground for a woman who erased him from her existence without a second thought. Nilan had wanted to be the main character in her life, but he ended up being a casualty of her absolute coldness. I didn't offer him forgiveness, and I didn't yell at him. I simply hung up the phone. Time has a strange way of filtering out the noise and leaving you with undeniable clarity. It has been almost 2 years since that morning in the kitchen. The divorce has been finalized, and the agonizing sting of the betrayal has slowly faded into a dull, manageable scar. I moved to a different part of the city, bought a smaller, quieter place just for myself, and spent a lot of time putting the shattered pieces of my self-worth back together. I am finally at peace. Every now and then, I look back on the day my marriage ended. People always say that cheating is the ultimate betrayal, the hardest thing a person can ever endure. But I know the truth. The sex, the sneaking around, the lies, those things hurt, but they can sometimes be explained by human weakness or a desperate need for validation. The true nightmare wasn't the affair. The true nightmare was looking into the eyes of the person I promised to love forever and realizing she was capable of looking right through me, completely untouched by the devastation she caused. Bella's absolute apathy was the loudest, most violent thing I have ever experienced. But in the end, her chilling confession gave me the exact push I needed to walk out the door. She was right about one thing. I would have never known if he hadn't texted me. And for that text message, despite all the pain it caused, I will quietly, entirely, be forever grateful.